Hello, welcome to Labor News at Work. Today's episode focuses on Amazon, the United States Marine Alliance negotiations with the longshoremen, and Starbucks. It's December the 23rd, 2024. I'm Merrick Masters, Professor of Business Emeritus, commentator, and podcaster. You can find me at my email address or my YouTube channel. We'll talk today about Major Strikes 2024, the Teamsters strike at Amazon, which is in its second week, recent NLRB elections and unfair labor practice filings at Amazon. Who's the employer at Amazon? That's a question which many people want to know the answer to. Strikes at Starbucks, recent NLRB elections and unfair labor practices at Starbucks. The negotiations, as I mentioned, between the United States Marine Alliance and the longshoremen, and the current contract language between these two parties on automation. You can see from the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics table here that there are a handful of strikes going on in November. The number of stoppages that began in the month were 5. The number of stoppages in effect at the month were 9, involving a total of 99,800 workers at the end of the month. And that is a very small percentage of the overall number of workers employed, which is over 161 million. Teamsters have announced a strike at Amazon. It's important to note that the Teamsters, as far as I can tell, does not represent anybody at Amazon except for the affiliation it has with the Amazon Labor Union that won an election in 2022 at a Staten Island warehouse. They're on strike at several locations. And the question here is, who are the nature of the employers that are being struck, as well as the nature of the workers involved? Are they employees of Amazon, or are they employees of third parties? The Teamsters is saying that this is a strike to stand up to a corporate bully, and Amazon Teamsters are doing just that. There's a little bit about the history of labor relations between the Teamsters and Amazon. It's a tense relationship, with the Teamsters having made several attempts to organize Amazon facilities and having failed to do so. As I mentioned, there was an organization election that took place in 2022 that succeeded in organizing several thousand workers at a Staten Island warehouse. But that union, the Amazon Labor Union, which is an independent union, failed to secure a contract with the company, and it has since entered an affiliation with the Teamsters to help it represent them in order to secure a contract. There's been a flurry of unfair labor practice charges filed between the parties, the Teamsters and Amazon, over this time period, which has indicated the degree of tension between them. Amazon Corporate, the corporate office, claims that many of the sites being struck by the Teamsters are third-party businesses operating as delivery service partners. They're not actually, in their estimation, employees of Amazon. They are employees of these third parties. And there are approximately 280,000 of those people who are working for these third-party providers in the United States and 390,000 globally. There was a recent case before a regional director of the National Labor Relations Board, which did hold that Amazon was a joint employer with its delivery service partners, which would have implications if it is upheld by the National Labor Relations Board in the courts for Amazon actually being the employer of these workers who are involved in strike actions reportedly across the country at several sites. There have been 2 NLRB election petitions filed involving Amazon in 2024, and 229 unfair labor practice charges filed involving Amazon, either with Amazon as the plaintiff or the defendant in this particular situation. Starbucks workers, those Starbucks United workers affiliated with the Service Employees International Union, have announced a strike, which is in its 5th or 6th day at this point in time, in which they are striking at various sites across the country, in Seattle and other major cities, in order to secure their first contract with the company. Strikes are taking place in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Seattle, and the union has won a number of certification elections under the National Labor Relations Act since 2021. In fact, it's held 776 election petitions, won 534 of them involving 12,186 workers. It's lost 97 cases. Starbucks has been involved in 314 unfair labor practice filings since January of 2024. Relations between the parties are obviously very tense. At the Marine Alliance and the Longshoremen, you have negotiations which apparently are currently at an impasse, which were continued after a tentative agreement was reached on wages to increase wages by 62% in the fall, and that ended a strike. But the parties' contract will expire, the extended contract will expire on January the 15th of next year. And if they can't reach an agreement on automation, you would expect to see that the union might reinstitute the strike, which could have significant implications for export and import traffic. President Trump has taken a stand in this and supported the longshoremen, indicating that in his judgment, they should be protected going forward in their job security from the threat of automation. Obviously, to a certain extent, this message that he signaled after a meeting with leaders of the longshoremen was to encourage the parties to come to an agreement and try and reconcile their differences. Here you have the language about the automation provisions in the contract for 2018, Article 11, Sections 1 through 3 on this slide, and Section 4 on this slide. You can read them and think about what might be done to revise this language in a mutually acceptable way to get the parties to come to an agreement. A little bit about myself and my background. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation, and stay tuned for more on labor news at work. Thank you and have a good day.